The very first of the autumn storms have come to the farm. It's rainy, it's cold, and there was even the slightest bit of frost on the car this morning. This turn of season reminds me that it's time to get things out of the garden, get into the kitchen, and get them stored up for the winter.
It's a good day to spend inside, days like this, where it's raining and cold. You want to be in anyways, and turns out we have a lot of work to do.
A lot to do in the kitchen. One of the very first things to come out completely from the garden is the summer basil. Basil likes it warm and sunny. It is not that at all right now here on the farm. But what this means for the freezer is a lot of pesto. Now, when I first learned how to make pesto, I watched an old Italian woman make it, and she had a mortar and pestle, and she ground it up gently by hand, added her olive oil, added her pine nuts, and it was beautiful and fluffy. And as much as I would like to adapt that for our kitchen, the Vitamix does a pretty good job at coming close to getting a beautiful pesto that we can enjoy all winter long. It's not quite the same, I'm sure, as having it pounded. But you know what? It gets the job done. And sometimes that's just what you got to do. Little olive oil, lemon juice, some Parmesan, a few nuts. It'll do.
We spent some time before the rain came gathering elderberries, just around, foraging for them. And right now we're storing all of this in the form of a tonic for wintertime, just anticipating the need to help our immune systems a little bit and have a tasty syrup.
It is delicious, drinks. And I love having it on hand. It's a wonderful way to get the kids' immune systems boosted, and ours as well. So the elderberries are gathered and simmered in a big pot of boiling water for a few hours. Then we add some cinnamon, a bunch of honey, and an entire bottle of On Guard, which is an immune-boosting essential oil blend. I remember when I first got introduced to elderberry syrup in the wintertime over a decade ago, and at the time it seemed so radical and so foreign and so extreme. And now that we've realized that elderberries grow all over our area, we've been making it for years. It's just kind of second hat. It's just kind of the taste of winter. So the kids will take a tablespoon with breakfast, or we'll have it in our tea, have it over our pancakes. It's a super simple way to make that bounty last all through the winter.
It's funny when you think back, and I'm sure most people have this experience, to their childhood and the smells and the food that characterize each season. Well, it comes from these traditions that you do as a family. And there's something very important about that and enduring and, just makes you want to provide that for your own kids. I imagine they'll think back as they're raising their kids and remember elderberry syrup in the fall.
This is what winter tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
Like cinnamon and clove and honey. I love that.
As the rain kept coming down today, we had more and more to preserve.
How does that happen? It all piles onto one day.
Well, when it rains, it pours.
Well, that was a good one.
So what was next?
I needed to get this big batch of radishes that I'd pulled out of the potager put up. And
now radishes are usually a spring crop for us.
They are, but they're a cool weather crop. And turns out I have mastered the skill of growing radishes in the fall. Do you want to know the secret?
Tell me what it is.
You have to plant them.
Ooh.
No, I know. Seriously. Radishes are very eager to grow anytime it's cool. And they can get big in just about 21 days. So I just counted backwards, planted a good fall crop, and now I'm able to lacto-ferment them, stick them into the refrigerator, and they should last all winter. And I think they will be absolutely delicious, spiced with pickle spices over things like roasts in the wintertime. When you need that sharpness, you're just craving that crunch. I'm quite pleased with them. And by the way, Stu, a huge thank you to you for building me that walk-in refrigerator downstairs, because lacto-fermented things need to be kept really cool to hold. And we've been able to lacto-ferment almost all of our vegetables this year, which is really exciting.
It is. So,
hey,
when we were learning how to process our lambs, and we had someone teach us how to do that on a small scale, just with a knife and our farm, one of the things that he told us was every decision you make up front is a culinary decision. You're thinking about what's going to end up on the table. And I think the same is very much true when you're preserving anything really from the farm.
Right. I've done this mistake in the past where you preserve something and you think, oh, I did it, but you didn't do it in a way that you would actually eat it. And turns out that's just a big waste of time.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to have these vegetables stocked up in the root cellar. And now it's on to the apples. Yeah,
we're in the self-proclaimed apple capital of the world.
I don't think that's self-proclaimed.
I think
it's in a record book somewhere.
Is it an official designation?
It's an official thing. Point is, we have a lot of apples in our area. And we had over 100 pounds sitting in our root cellar just waiting for us to make our applesauce. Mm-hmm. The very earliest memory I have of preserving foods was preserving applesauce and pear sauce with my grandfather. We would walk to his house after school. He would have the apples going, and it would be our job to churn the little thingy, the saucer thingy.
The grinder
thing. Yeah. And of course, we ate most all of it. But it's still that smell. You were mentioning the nostalgic smell of childhood. That's one of those smells for me.
Certainly.
Every time I smell it, I think of him and I think of that work in the kitchen. And it's exciting to think we're going to pass that same nostalgia down to our children.
Yeah, the hope is that these are things, traditions that, beyond just the sustenance that they provide, these traditions provide a way of just being in the world and appreciating on a deeper level than just it fills our bellies.
Right.
It fills our souls in some way too. So
it really does.
That we hope to pass that on as well. So this is the day the chickens really like because they get all the yummy scraps.
They do.
But Shaye had to brave the weather to give them their treat.
It's storming out there. It was freezing. I'll do it for the chickens, though. One of my very favorite parts of welcoming the autumn into our home is christening the fireplace for the first time that season. It always feels like this huge marking where now it's acceptable to bring out the quilted blankets, to light the fire at night, to make tea every 3 hours, and just to enjoy sitting still, which we don't do a lot in the summertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and after a day like that where you spend quite a lot of time and effort, you are just kind of worn out, and it just feels appropriate to gather everybody around and sit by the fire on a cold, wet day in the evening and enjoy that time.
Don't you think that's something that's grievously missing in our culture? Just sitting still and being still in your mind and taking a moment to pause and just spend time together?
I think we're increasingly running out of opportunities to do that unless you're intentional about making them for yourself. The fact is, we have any number of things that can distract us and seem very urgent all the time. And it is a good thing, I think, to just stop for a moment and slow down a little bit.
We always joke that I can feel guilty about feeling guilty. And one of the things I tend to feel guilty about is not including our children in enough extracurricular activities. But then sometimes it's nice to sit back and reflect and see all that they get to be involved in here on the farm, because we're not a family that lives autonomously, right? We're a unit that sort of does things like make applesauce or sit around the fire or even label the elderberry syrup. That's all things we get to do together.
Yeah, it's just a matter of deciding to fill your time in a particular way. Everybody fills their time in some way. And you do that, partly because you see value in it in some way. And this is the thing that we say is valuable for us and our family right now.
Right. And partly because, totally selfishly, I just want to hang out with them. They're fun kids. And when they fall in love with things like the smell of applesauce or reading by the fire, I want to be there doing that with them. By the way, Georgia's become quite the Monty Don fan.
She does. She takes it into her bedroom at night and up on her bunk bed while Julia is sleeping, keeps the lights on and reads through Monty Don.
Does that mean I'm rubbing off on her?
For good or bad.
As this first cold day of autumn ends, I'm already anticipating the work ahead tomorrow. Any gardener knows that panicked feeling in your belly where you just start to think of all the work that needs to be done out in the gardens. But before we do that, we're going to just have fun and we're going to celebrate the beauty and the bounty that came from the flower gardens this year. One of the most beautiful ways to celebrate the bounty of the flower garden is to preserve flowers that will hold over for a few months inside. They'll dry, of course, but they'll retain some of their color and some of those natural elements that so beautifully decorate the cottage this time of year. Sedum is a beautiful choice. The colors will fade slightly, but it holds its shape really well and works really beautifully in dried arrangements or in wreaths. So basically, going out to the potager now, my objective is just to ruthlessly clip back anything I can bring inside that will help to extend the beauty of this season indoors.
Obviously, something like this doesn't have the immediate utilitarian and pragmatic benefit of like preserving food. And so the question becomes, is it actually necessary?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think we've definitely answered in the affirmative. But I think that's a big question for people because the fact is you're always having to figure out what to do with your time and energy.
Listen, you could work yourself to the bone all day, every day. You could have all the money in the world and you could still be very sad. And something like flowers that can bring you joy, I think, is a worthwhile endeavor. To take a break from the utilitarian work at hand, even though there are vegetable beds that need to be mulched and raked and fertilized, pausing to say, I'm going to just focus on something beautiful and good, purely for the sake of beauty. So valuable.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe a bit of a misrepresentation to say that it's not practical. I mean, we think it's immensely practical to do this.
To
even
feed your soul.
Yeah, it might not look exactly like the immediate practicality of preserving food that you're going to eat. There's a practicality that comes in preserving beauty and cultivating beauty, and something our souls and our hearts need and thrive on, especially when you might be lacking some of that beauty in the colder, darker months.
It's beautiful, just in a different way.
It is. It is. It's rewarding.
My hope this year is to really embrace this change of season. Because traditionally, we've had so many projects going on the farm and in the gardens that I just panic knowing we're not going to be able to tend to any of them for a season. This year, because a lot of those fires have been put out, as it were, my goal is to really embrace this season and let it be a rest for our bodies and for our minds, knowing that we can't do anything out there anyway. But the gardener in me still wants to take in as much as I can so I can embrace the season better. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Does it contradict itself?
No, I think what you're describing possibly is just a maturing that's happening in ourselves.
Hey.
As we, each year, we get a better sense and hopefully a deeper sense of what we're doing and what we're about. And hopefully we grow and mature that much more. And like you were saying, it's been a challenge in the past to make it through winter. But I think that might be partly because we needed to mature into accepting that season and all that
Absolutely.
it gives.
At the end of the day, I want to feel very, very thankful for the change of season. To feel the cold on my face, to let the garden beds rest, to let my body rest, and to just be at peace with what's to come next.